Welcome to Sinister Happening, where every day has the potential to become the day that changes everything. Story 1. The Morning Coffee. Sarah's perfect morning routine was about to become her worst nightmare, but she had no idea that the barista's trembling hands weren't from caffeine withdrawal. The local cafe buzzed with its usual energy. As commuters grabbed their daily fuel, steam rising from espresso machines like incense in a temple of productivity. Sarah ordered her usual vanilla latte, extra shot, watching the young barista's nervous movements as foam swirled into delicate patterns. The first sip tasted different bitter, with a metallic aftertaste that made her tongue tingle strangely. Within minutes, her vision blurred, and her heart raced like a trapped bird against her ribs. The barista had accidentally mixed cleaning solution with the milk steamer, and Sarah's ordinary Tuesday was about to become a fight for her life in the hospital emergency room. She survived, but her sense of taste never fully returned, and every morning coffee now tastes like the memory of that terrible mistake. Story 2. The Grocery Store Run. Mark thought the biggest challenge of his Saturday grocery trip would be finding ripe avocados, but the man following him through every aisle had much darker intentions. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Mark methodically worked through his list, unaware that every turn he made was being mirrored by a stranger in a red baseball cap. The produce section, dairy aisle, frozen foods everywhere Mark went. The man appeared moments later, pretending to study labels while stealing glances. Mark's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop at the parking lot or your daughter pays?" His blood turned to ice as he realized the man had been taking photos of his license plate, his home address visible on a package slip that had fallen from his pocket. The ordinary trip became a terrifying game of cat and mouse through the store's maze-like layout, with Mark desperately trying to lose his stalker while calling police. The man was never caught, but Mark discovered his trash had been searched, and his family's routine had been studied for weeks before that fateful Saturday. Story 3. The Dentist Appointment. Rebecca's routine cleaning was supposed to last 30 minutes, but Dr. Martinez's hands wouldn't stop shaking as he reached for instruments that weren't meant for cleaning. The sterile smell of the office mixed with something else, something chemical and wrong that made her stomach clench with inexplicable dread. She'd been coming to this practice for years, trusting the familiar faces and gentle procedures, but today Dr. Martinez seemed different, his eyes unfocused and his breathing shallow. The dental assistant kept glancing nervously at the door, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by something that looked like fear. Rebecca felt the sharp prick of a needle that wasn't supposed to be there, and her world began to spin as unauthorized medication flooded her system. Dr. Martinez was later arrested for drug theft and illegal experimentation on patients, but Rebecca's nervous system never fully recovered from the cocktail of stolen pharmaceuticals he'd injected into her bloodstream. Her routine dental visit became a lifelong battle with tremors and memory loss that no amount of medical treatment could completely reverse. Story 4. The School Pickup. Jennifer arrived at Lincoln Elementary at exactly 3:15 p.m., like she had hundreds of times before, but today her daughter Emma wouldn't be walking out those familiar doors. The usual crowd of parents gathered on the sidewalk, everyone checking phones and making small talk, while yellow buses rumbled to life in the distance. Jennifer waved to other mothers she recognized, her mind already planning the afternoon's snacks and homework routine. The final bell rang and children poured out like water from a broken dam, backpacks bouncing and voices rising in excited chatter. Minutes passed. Other families departed. Jennifer's smile began to crack as she scanned the thinning crowd for Emma's familiar pink backpack and bouncing curls. The school secretary emerged with a clipboard, and a look that made Jennifer's heart stop. Emma had never arrived at school that morning, despite being dropped off at the usual time and place. The next 6 hours became a nightmare of police interviews, search parties, and the slow realization that someone had been watching Emma's routine for weeks. Emma was found safe but traumatized in a stranger's basement, and Jennifer learned that ordinary school days can disappear in an instant when predators study your most predictable moments. Story 5. The Commuter Train. David's 7:42 a.m. train to downtown was running perfectly on schedule, but the passenger sitting 3 seats behind him was carrying something that would turn his mundane commute into international news. The morning rush hour crowd swayed in familiar rhythm as the train curved through tunnels and emerged into brief flashes of sunlight. David scrolled through emails on his phone, earbuds blocking out the usual symphony of conversations and rattling wheels. The conductor announced the next stop in the same monotone voice that had marked David's mornings for 3 years. But at 8:14 a.m., a man in a grey hoodie stood up and began shouting about government conspiracies while reaching into a suspiciously heavy backpack. David's world exploded into chaos as passengers screamed and dove for cover. The familiar commute transformed into a scene from a disaster movie. The device was fakier mentally ill man's desperate cry for attention, but the panic was real, and David spent the next hour trapped in a tunnel while bomb squads and negotiators worked above ground. He never took public transportation again, his trust in the safety of routine forever shattered by those terrifying 23 minutes when his ordinary train became a potential death trap. Story 6. The haircut. Lisa's monthly trim at Bella's salon was supposed to refresh her look for spring, but the new stylist's trembling hands were hiding a devastating secret about her past. The salon's familiar atmosphere of gossip and hairspray embraced Lisa as she settled into the worn leather chair, trusting her appearance to a woman whose references had checked out perfectly. Stephanie seemed nervous but competent, her scissors moving in practiced patterns as she trimmed Lisa's shoulder-length brown hair. The conversation flowed easily: weekend plans, favorite restaurants, complaints about the weather, while Lisa relaxed into the therapeutic rhythm of professional pampering. But Stephanie's hands began to shake more violently, and Lisa noticed the woman's eyes filling with tears as she worked. The scissors slipped, not once but 3 times, each cut deeper than the last, until Lisa's scalp was bleeding and her hair was ruined beyond repair. Stephanie broke down completely, confessing that she'd been struggling with severe withdrawal from prescription medications and had been hiding her addiction from her employer. Lisa's simple haircut became a medical emergency requiring stitches and months of recovery, her trust in routine beauty services forever altered by a stranger's hidden battle with demons. Story 7. The Dog Walk. Tom's evening stroll through Riverside Park with his golden retriever Max was about to become a deadly encounter with something that shouldn't exist in suburban neighborhoods. The familiar path wound through carefully maintained gardens and past the old oak tree, where Max always stopped to investigate interesting smells. Other dog walkers nodded in recognition as they passed, everyone following the unspoken rules of park etiquette, while their pets explored the world through scent and sound. The sun was setting behind the playground, casting long shadows that made the ordinary landscape look almost magical. Max suddenly stopped, his ears perked, and his body rigid with an alertness that made Tom's skin crawl. The growl that emerged from his normally gentle dog was unlike anything Tom had ever heard, primal and filled with terror. Through the bushes, something moved, something too large and too wrong to be a raccoon or stray cat. The creature that emerged had escaped from a private exotic animal facility 20 miles away, and Tom's peaceful evening became a life-or-death struggle with a predator that had been hunting in the park for weeks. Max died protecting his owner, and Tom learned that even the most familiar places can hide dangers that transform ordinary moments into nightmares. Story 8. The Library Visit. Karen's quiet Saturday afternoon researching family genealogy was interrupted by a librarian whose helpful smile was masking a dangerous obsession with her personal information. The university library's genealogy section provided the perfect sanctuary for Karen's retirement project, surrounded by thick volumes of local history and the comfortable silence of serious research. She'd been coming here for months, building relationships with staff who seemed genuinely interested in her family tree project. Mrs. Patterson, the head librarian, always remembered Karen's name and offered additional resources with enthusiasm that seemed almost too good to be true. The computer terminals hummed quietly as Karen scrolled through digital records, occasionally printing documents that Mrs. Patterson would personally deliver with that same warm smile. But today, Mrs. Patterson lingered too long, asking too many specific questions about Karen's home address, her living situation, her family's financial history. The helpful librarian had been copying Karen's research, building a detailed profile of her assets and vulnerabilities for an identity theft ring that had been operating through the library for over a year. Karen's innocent genealogy project became a federal case when investigators discovered that Mrs. Patterson had been stealing personal information from dozens of patrons, using their trust and their family histories to destroy their financial lives, one helpful suggestion at a time. Story 9. The parking meter. Michelle's quick errand to pay a parking meter downtown was about to drag her into a web of corruption that reached the highest levels of city government. The familiar ritual of feeding quarters into the mechanical mouth of bureaucracy seemed routine enough, just another minor tax on urban life that everyone accepted without question. She'd parked in this same spot dozens of times, always playing by the rules and never questioning why some meters worked perfectly while others ate coins without providing time. Today, as Michelle inserted her quarters and waited for the satisfying click of purchased minutes, she noticed something odd about the meter's internal mechanism. A small camera had been installed inside, and wires ran to a device that didn't belong in standard parking equipment. Her curiosity about the unusual modification led her to document the evidence and report it to authorities, unknowingly triggering a massive investigation into a conspiracy that involved rigged meters, stolen funds, and a network of corruption that extended through the police department, the mayor's office, and the city's parking authority. Michelle's simple act of paying for parking became the catalyst for a federal investigation that brought down a dozen officials and revealed how ordinary citizens were being systematically robbed through municipal services they trusted without question. Story 10. The ATM transaction. Robert's routine withdrawal at the bank's drive-through ATM was about to become his introduction to a sophisticated criminal enterprise that had been studying his every financial move. The machine's familiar interface welcomed him with the same electronic cheerfulness that had greeted him twice a week for the past 5 years, its screen glowing with promises of convenient access to his hard-earned money. He inserted his card and entered his PIN with the automatic precision of long practice, already mentally organizing the cash he needed for his weekend activities. The transaction seemed normal account balance displayed, withdrawal amount selected, receipt printed with satisfying efficiency. But as Robert drove away, he didn't notice the nearly invisible device that had been attached to the card slot, or the tiny camera that had recorded his PIN from an angle that defeated the machine's privacy hood. Within hours, his account was empty, his identity stolen, and his financial life destroyed by criminals who had been patiently collecting data from dozens of customers at this same ATM. Robert's simple banking transaction became the beginning of a 2-year battle to restore his credit, his savings, and his faith in the security of financial institutions that promised to protect what mattered most to him. Story 11. The pizza delivery. Amanda's Friday night pizza order was about to introduce her to a delivery driver whose interest in her apartment layout had nothing to do with finding the front door. The familiar ritual of ordering from Tony's Pizza had become a weekly tradition, a small luxury that marked the end of challenging work weeks and the beginning of relaxing weekends. She'd spoken to the same dispatcher dozens of times, always requesting extra cheese and always providing the same delivery instructions for her second-floor apartment. The driver who arrived tonight was new, but his uniform looked official, and his smile seemed professional as he balanced the steaming box and made polite conversation about the weather. Amanda invited him inside while she searched for her wallet, unknowingly providing him with a detailed view of her apartment's layout, her expensive electronics, and her living situation. The pizza was delicious, but the driver never worked for Tony's Pizza. He was part of a burglary ring that used fake delivery services to case potential targets, and Amanda's Friday night treat became the reconnaissance mission that led to a break-in the following week. She lost everything valuable, but more importantly, she lost the sense of security that had made her apartment feel like a safe haven from the world's dangers. Story 12. The yoga class. Jennifer's Tuesday morning yoga session was supposed to center her mind and strengthen her body, but the instructor's hands-on adjustments were hiding a pattern of abuse that had been escalating for months. The studio's serene atmosphere of soft lighting and calming music created the perfect environment for healing and self-discovery, with students trusting their instructor's guidance as they moved through poses that required vulnerability and faith. Master Chen had built a reputation for transformative teachings and healing touch, attracting students who were seeking more than just physical fitness from their practice. Jennifer had been attending his classes for 6 months, gradually allowing him to provide more intimate adjustments as her flexibility improved and her trust in his methods deepened. But today, His hands lingered in places that had nothing to do with proper alignment, and his whispered instructions carried suggestions that made her skin crawl with uncomfortable recognition. The yoga studio became a crime scene when 3 other students came forward with similar experiences, revealing that Master Chen had been using his position of trust and authority to sexually assault vulnerable students under the guise of spiritual guidance. Jennifer's search for inner peace became a legal battle that exposed how predators use holistic environments to exploit the trust and openness that authentic healing requires. Story 13. The Elevator Ride. Paul's routine trip to the 15th floor was about to become a terrifying introduction to the building's maintenance worker who had been planning this moment for weeks. The elevator's familiar hum and gentle vibration provided the soundtrack for Paul's daily ascent to his accounting firm, a mindless transition between the chaos of street level and the organized calm of his office environment. He'd shared this small metal box with hundreds of co-workers over the years, everyone observing the unspoken rules of elevator etiquette while privately calculating arrival times and planning their days. The maintenance worker who stepped in at the 7th floor seemed familiar, though Paul couldn't place exactly where he'd seen the man's weathered face and coveralls before. The elevator's emergency stop button wasn't supposed to be accessible to anyone except authorized personnel, but the maintenance worker had been planning this encounter for weeks, studying Paul's schedule and waiting for the perfect moment to act. The elevator became a prison as the worker revealed his knowledge of Paul's personal life, his family's routines, and his financial situation, demanding payment for silence about secrets that could destroy Paul's career and marriage. Paul's simple trip to work became a nightmare of extortion that continued for months, with the maintenance worker using his access to the building's systems to monitor and terrorize his victim until security cameras finally captured evidence of the ongoing crime. Story 14. The Pharmacy Pickup. Linda's monthly prescription pickup was about to reveal that her trusted pharmacist had been slowly poisoning her with incorrect medications for over a year. The familiar routine of presenting her insurance card and waiting for the white paper bag had become as automatic as breathing, a minor inconvenience that modern medicine demanded in exchange for the chemicals that kept her chronic condition manageable. She'd been using this pharmacy for 5 years, building a relationship with staff who knew her name and always asked about her family with seemingly genuine interest. Dr. Peterson, the head pharmacist, had earned her trust through years of careful attention to her needs, always explaining potential side effects and drug interactions with the thoroughness of someone who truly cared about patient safety. But Linda's symptoms had been getting worse despite her medication, and today she decided to ask Dr. Peterson about adjusting her dosage or trying a different prescription. The conversation revealed that Dr. Peterson had been deliberately substituting her medication with cheaper alternatives and pocketing the insurance payments, slowly damaging her health while enriching himself through systematic fraud. Linda's routine pharmacy visit became a federal investigation that uncovered a network of corrupt pharmacists who had been endangering patients' lives for profit, turning the most trusted corner of healthcare into a criminal enterprise that betrayed the faith of thousands of vulnerable people. Story 15. The Babysitter. Karen's date night with her husband was about to become every parent's worst nightmare when their trusted babysitter revealed her true intentions for their 6-year-old daughter. The familiar routine of preparing instructions and emergency contacts felt comforting as Karen reviewed house rules with Jessica, a babysitter who had been watching Emma for 8 months without incident. Jessica's references had been impeccable, her background check clean, and her interactions with Emma always seemed natural and caring. The young woman had become almost like family, someone Karen trusted implicitly with her most precious responsibility. But tonight, Jessica's phone kept buzzing with messages from contacts she tried to hide, and her usual cheerful demeanor seemed forced and distracted. Karen's motherly instincts told her something was wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what had changed about Jessica's behavior. The date night became a frantic race home when Karen's neighbor texted that strange cars had been parked outside their house, and unfamiliar people had been seen entering through the back door. Jessica had been trafficking children through a network that used babysitting services as cover, and Emma had been selected as the next victim in an operation that had been studying their family's routines for months. Karen's trust in childcare became a lifelong paranoia that no amount of screening could ever fully eliminate. Story 16. The car wash. Steve's weekly car wash was about to become a crime scene when he discovered what the attendants had been hiding in the trunk of every vehicle they serviced. The automatic wash bay's familiar rhythm of soap and water provided a meditative 20 minutes in Steve's busy schedule, a small ritual that kept his sedan looking professional while giving him time to organize his thoughts for the week ahead. He'd been using this same car wash for 3 years, always choosing the deluxe package and always tipping the attendants who dried his car with careful attention to detail. The business seemed legitimate, family-owned and operated, with the kind of personal service that was becoming rare in an automated world. But today, Steve noticed that the attendants spent an unusually long time working on his trunk area, and their conversation stopped abruptly when he approached to collect his keys. His curiosity about their suspicious behavior led him to check his trunk more carefully, discovering a hidden compartment that had been installed without his knowledge. The car wash was a front for a drug smuggling operation that used customers' vehicles to transport contraband, installing hidden compartments and using innocent people as unwitting drug mules. Steve's simple car maintenance became a federal investigation that revealed how criminals exploit routine services to turn law-abiding citizens into accessories to serious crimes. Story 17. The blood test. Maria's routine annual physical was about to reveal that her doctor had been using her blood samples for illegal genetic experiments that violated every principle of medical ethics. The familiar procedure of rolling up her sleeve and looking away from the needle had become as routine as any other aspect of preventive healthcare, a minor discomfort that responsible adults endured to maintain their health. Dr. Williams had been her physician for 12 years, guiding her through pregnancies, minor illnesses, and the gradual changes that came with aging. His bedside manner was exceptional, his knowledge comprehensive, and his dedication to patient care seemed genuine and unwavering. But Maria's blood work had been showing unusual markers for months, and today she decided to ask Dr. Williams for a more detailed explanation of what the tests were actually measuring. The conversation revealed that Dr. Williams had been selling patient blood samples to pharmaceutical companies for genetic research, using his patients' trust and medical information to enrich himself, while potentially exposing them to privacy violations and discrimination. Maria's routine health maintenance became a landmark lawsuit that exposed how medical professionals could exploit the intimate trust relationship between doctor and patient, turning healthcare into a commodity that served corporate interests rather than patient welfare. Story 18. The Uber ride. Jessica's late-night ride home from the airport was about to become a kidnapping when she realized her driver had been tracking her travel patterns for weeks. The familiar comfort of summoning transportation through her phone app had made solo travel feel safer and more convenient, with driver ratings and GPS tracking providing the illusion of security in an uncertain world. She'd taken dozens of rides with different drivers, always following the safety protocols of checking license plates and sharing trip details with friends. Tonight's driver seemed professional and courteous, his car clean and his route efficient as he navigated the familiar streets between the airport and her downtown apartment. But Jessica began to notice that he knew details about her travel schedule that weren't in her ride request, and his questions about her living situation seemed too personal for casual conversation. The ride became a nightmare when the driver revealed that he'd been using his access to the rideshare platform to study her patterns, her home address, and her work schedule. Jessica's convenient transportation became a federal case when investigators discovered that the driver had been part of a network that used rideshare services to identify and target vulnerable passengers, turning the trust-based economy into a hunting ground for predators who exploited the intimacy of shared transportation. Story 19. The gym membership. Kevin's morning workout routine was about to introduce him to a personal trainer whose interest in his body had nothing to do with fitness goals. The familiar environment of weights and cardio machines provided the perfect start to Kevin's days, with the endorphin rush of exercise setting a positive tone for his demanding work schedule. He'd been a member of Elite Fitness for 2 years, comfortable with the equipment, and familiar with the staff who maintained the facility with professional efficiency. Marcus, the new personal trainer, had impressive credentials and an enthusiasm for fitness that seemed genuine and motivating. The training sessions began innocently enough, with Marcus providing excellent guidance on form and nutrition while pushing Kevin to achieve results he'd never thought possible. But the trainer's hands-on adjustments became increasingly intimate, and his suggestions about recovery techniques involved activities that had nothing to do with legitimate fitness instruction. Kevin's pursuit of physical health became a legal battle when he discovered that Marcus had been using his position to sexually assault multiple clients, recording their sessions for blackmail purposes. The gym's trusted environment became a crime scene that revealed how predators use positions of authority and physical intimacy to exploit victims who are already in vulnerable positions. Story 20. The eye exam. Patricia's routine vision check was about to reveal that her optometrist had been deliberately damaging her eyesight to increase his profits from expensive treatments. The familiar routine of reading eye charts and looking through various lenses had become an annual ritual that Patricia approached with the same resignation she felt toward all medical appointments. Doctor Carson had been her eye doctor for 7 years, always professional and seemingly competent, with a modern office that suggested success and expertise. Her vision had been gradually declining, but Dr. Carson assured her that this was normal aging and that his treatments would slow the progression of her condition. The expensive eye drops and special lenses he prescribed seemed to help temporarily, but Patricia's symptoms always returned worse than before. Today's examination revealed that Dr. Carson had been using laser treatments to deliberately damage her retina, creating problems that required ongoing expensive treatments from his specialized practice. Patricia's routine eye care became a malpractice lawsuit that exposed how medical professionals could use their expertise to create the very problems they claimed to treat, turning healthcare into a criminal enterprise that preyed on patients' trust and vulnerability. Story 21. The mail delivery. Frank's afternoon mail pickup was about to reveal that his postal worker had been reading his personal correspondence and using the information to destroy his marriage. The familiar routine of checking his mailbox had become as automatic as any other daily ritual, with Frank barely noticing the postal worker who had been serving his neighborhood for over a decade. Gerald seemed like a model employee, always punctual and professional, with the kind of steady reliability that made him nearly invisible in Frank's daily routine. But Frank's mail had been arriving later than usual, and some important documents seemed to be missing entirely. Today, he decided to wait for Gerald and ask about the delivery delays that had been affecting his business correspondence. The conversation revealed that Gerald had been steaming open Frank's mail, photographing the contents, and selling personal information to Frank's business competitors and divorce attorney. Frank's routine mail delivery became a federal investigation that uncovered how postal workers could exploit their access to private correspondence, turning the most trusted communication system into a tool for espionage and personal destruction. Story 22. The plumber visit. Nancy's call for emergency plumbing service was about to introduce her to a repairman whose real interest was in installing hidden surveillance equipment throughout her home. The familiar frustration of dealing with a backed-up kitchen sink had led Nancy to call the first plumber she found in her phone's search results, trusting that licensing and reviews would ensure professional service. Joe arrived quickly with a truck full of professional equipment and a confident manner that suggested years of experience solving similar problems. The repair work seemed thorough and competent, with Joe explaining the problem and providing estimates for additional maintenance that would prevent future issues. But Nancy noticed that Joe spent an unusual amount of time working in areas of her home that had nothing to do with plumbing, and his questions about her living situation seemed too personal for professional conversation. The plumbing repair became a police investigation when Nancy discovered tiny cameras in her bathroom and bedroom, installed by a criminal who used home service calls to gain access to victims' most private spaces. Nancy's simple plumbing problem became a violation of her privacy that took months to fully remediate, with the knowledge that her most intimate moments had been recorded and potentially distributed online. Story 23. The veterinarian appointment. Carol's routine visit to have her cat vaccinated was about to reveal that her trusted veterinarian had been conducting illegal experiments on pets under the guise of standard medical care. The familiar sterile smell of the animal hospital and the sound of barking dogs in the waiting room provided the soundtrack for Carol's quarterly visits with Whiskers, her aging tabby who had been Dr. Patterson's patient for 8 years. The veterinarian's reputation for compassionate animal care had made him the preferred choice for pet owners throughout the county, with a practice that seemed to genuinely prioritize animal welfare over profit. But Whiskers had been experiencing unusual symptoms after recent visits, and today Carol decided to ask Dr. Patterson for more detailed explanations of the treatments he had been providing. The conversation revealed that Dr. Patterson had been using pet patients as test subjects for experimental drugs, charging owners for standard care while secretly conducting research that violated animal welfare laws. Carol's routine pet care became a criminal investigation that exposed how veterinarians could exploit pet owners' trust and love for their animals, turning veterinary medicine into a cover for illegal research that endangered the creatures it claimed to protect. Story 24. The Taxi Ride. Michael's quick trip across town was about to become a kidnapping when he realized his taxi driver had been following his daily routine for weeks. The familiar yellow cab provided reliable transportation through the city's crowded streets, with Michael trusting the licensing system and professional standards that were supposed to ensure passenger safety. He'd taken hundreds of taxi rides without incident, always following basic safety protocols while appreciating the convenience of professional transportation. Today's driver seemed friendly and knowledgeable about the city, making conversation about traffic and weather while navigating the familiar route to Michael's destination. But the driver's questions became increasingly personal, and his knowledge of Michael's work schedule and home address seemed too detailed for casual conversation. The taxi ride became a nightmare when the driver revealed that he'd been using his access to passenger information to study Michael's patterns, planning a kidnapping that would target Michael's wealthy family for ransom. Michael's convenient transportation became a federal case when investigators discovered that the driver had been part of a network that used taxi services to identify and target wealthy passengers, turning public transportation into a hunting ground for criminals who exploited the trust between passengers and professional drivers. Story 25. The Restaurant Dinner. Lisa's birthday celebration at her favorite restaurant was about to become food poisoning when she discovered that the kitchen staff had been deliberately contaminating meals to cover up their drug-dealing operation. The familiar atmosphere of candlelit tables and professional service had made Giovanni's her go-to choice for special occasions, with a reputation for excellent food and attentive staff that seemed to justify the premium prices. She'd been dining here for 3 years, always receiving the kind of personalized service that made her feel like a valued customer rather than just another transaction. Tonight's meal began perfectly, with the familiar flavors and presentation that had made Giovanni's her favorite restaurant in the city. But other diners began showing signs of illness, and Lisa noticed that the kitchen staff seemed unusually agitated and distracted from their normal professional demeanor. The birthday dinner became a medical emergency when Lisa realized that the kitchen staff had been using the restaurant as a front for drug distribution, deliberately poisoning customers who asked too many questions about unusual activities in the dining room. Lisa's special celebration became a federal investigation that revealed how restaurants could serve as cover for criminal enterprises, using food service as a legitimate business while conducting illegal activities that endangered public health. Story 26. The Mechanic Visit. Tom's routine oil change was about to reveal that his trusted mechanic had been installing tracking devices in customers' vehicles to monitor their movements for a stalking ring. The familiar smell of motor oil and the sound of pneumatic tools provided the soundtrack for Tom's quarterly maintenance visits, with his mechanic's expertise ensuring that his vehicle remained reliable and safe. Eddie had been servicing Tom's car for 4 years, always providing honest assessments and fair prices that had earned Tom's trust and loyalty. The service bay's professional atmosphere suggested competence and integrity, with certifications and customer testimonials that reinforced Eddie's reputation for quality work. But Tom's car had been experiencing unusual electrical problems, and today he decided to ask Eddie for a more thorough diagnostic examination. The inspection revealed that Eddie had been installing GPS tracking devices in customers' vehicles, selling location data to stalkers and criminals who used the information to target victims. Tom's routine car maintenance became a criminal investigation that exposed how auto repair shops could exploit their access to customers' vehicles, turning basic maintenance into a violation of privacy that enabled dangerous criminal activity. Story 27. The Dry Cleaner. Margaret's weekly dry cleaning pickup was about to introduce her to a business owner whose interest in her expensive clothing had nothing to do with professional cleaning services. The familiar ritual of dropping off and collecting her work wardrobe had become as routine as any other aspect of Margaret's professional life, with the dry cleaner's quality service ensuring that her appearance always met the standards of her demanding corporate environment. Chen's Dry Cleaning had been serving Margaret for 2 years, always providing excellent results and professional service that justified the premium prices for specialized garment care. The staff seemed competent and trustworthy, with the kind of attention to detail that suggested genuine pride in their work. But Margaret noticed that her clothing sometimes smelled different after cleaning, and certain garments seemed to fit differently than she remembered. Today's pickup revealed that the dry cleaner had been using customers' expensive clothing as collateral for loans, renting out designer garments to other customers while charging the original owners for cleaning services. Margaret's routine dry cleaning became a theft investigation that exposed how service businesses could exploit customers' trust, using personal property as unauthorized rental inventory while maintaining the appearance of legitimate professional service. Story 28. The Landscaper. David's monthly lawn service was about to become a burglary when he discovered that his landscaper had been studying his home's security system while trimming hedges. The familiar sound of lawnmowers and leaf blowers provided the soundtrack for David's Saturday mornings, with professional landscaping service ensuring that his property always looked well-maintained and attractive. Miguel had been caring for David's lawn for 18 months, always providing reliable service and fair prices that had earned David's trust and respect. The landscaping crew seemed professional and hard-working, with the kind of attention to detail that suggested genuine pride in their work. But David noticed that Miguel spent an unusual amount of time working near windows and seemed unusually interested in David's home security system and daily routines. The lawn service became a police investigation when David's home was burglarized by criminals who knew exactly when the house would be empty and how to disable the security system. David's routine lawn care became a lesson in how service providers could exploit their access to private property, using legitimate business relationships to gather intelligence for criminal activities. Story 29. The Massage Therapist. Jennifer's monthly massage appointment was about to become sexual assault when she realized that her trusted therapist had been escalating his inappropriate touching over several sessions. The familiar environment of soft lighting and calming music had made the spa feel like a safe haven from the stresses of Jennifer's demanding career, with therapeutic massage providing both physical and emotional relief. Marcus had been her massage therapist for 6 months, always maintaining professional boundaries while providing excellent therapeutic results that had significantly improved Jennifer's chronic back pain. The spa's reputation for professional service and healing had made Jennifer feel confident about the treatments, trusting that licensing and professional standards would ensure appropriate care. But today's session crossed lines that had been gradually shifting over previous appointments, with Marcus's hands moving to areas that had nothing to do with therapeutic massage. Jennifer's wellness routine became a criminal case when she discovered that Marcus had been using his position to sexually assault multiple clients, recording sessions for blackmail purposes. The spa's trusted environment became a crime scene that revealed how healing professions could be exploited by predators who used their position of trust and physical access to victimize vulnerable clients. Story 30. The Computer Repair. Paul's laptop repair was about to reveal that the technician had been copying personal files and selling private information to identity thieves. The familiar frustration of dealing with computer problems had led Paul to trust his laptop to a repair shop that seemed professional and competent, with certifications and customer reviews that suggested expertise and integrity. TechFix had been serving Paul's neighborhood for 5 years, always providing reliable service and reasonable prices that had earned the trust of local residents. The repair shop's professional atmosphere and knowledgeable staff suggested competence and honesty, with diagnostic equipment and technical expertise that seemed to justify their reputation. But Paul's laptop had been experiencing unusual problems since the last repair, and today he decided to ask for a more detailed explanation of the work that had been performed. The conversation revealed that the technician had been copying customers' personal files, selling private information to identity thieves who used the data to destroy victims' financial lives. Paul's routine computer repair became a federal investigation that exposed how technology services could be used to violate privacy and enable criminal activity. turning the most trusted aspect of modern life into a tool for exploitation. Story 31. The House Cleaner. Sarah's weekly cleaning service was about to become a robbery when she discovered that her trusted housekeeper had been creating duplicate keys and selling access to her home. The familiar ritual of preparing for the cleaning service had become as routine as any other aspect of Sarah's busy professional life, with reliable household help ensuring that her home remained organized and clean despite her demanding schedule. Maria had been cleaning Sarah's house for over a year, always providing thorough service and demonstrating the kind of trustworthiness that had made her feel like part of the family. The cleaning service seemed professional and reliable, with bonding and insurance that suggested legitimate business practices and customer protection. But Sarah noticed that personal items had been moved or were missing entirely, and her home security system showed unusual activity on days when cleaning was scheduled. The cleaning service became a police investigation when Sarah's home was burglarized by criminals who knew exactly where valuable items were located and how to avoid the security system. Sarah's routine house cleaning became a violation of her privacy and security that revealed how domestic services could be used to facilitate criminal activity. Story 32. The Babysitter. Karen's evening out was about to become every parent's nightmare when she discovered that her babysitter had been live streaming her children's activities to online predators. The familiar routine of preparing instructions and emergency contacts had made Karen feel confident about leaving her children with Jessica, a babysitter who had been watching 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Jake for 6 months without incident. Jessica's references had been excellent, her background check clean, and her interactions with the children always seemed natural and caring. But tonight, Karen noticed that Jessica's phone was constantly recording, and her usual attention to the children seemed distracted by something on her screen. The evening became a nightmare when Karen returned home early to find Jessica broadcasting live video of her children to an online audience that was paying for access to private family moments. Jessica had been part of a network that used babysitting services to create illegal content featuring children, turning the most trusted childcare arrangement into a criminal enterprise that exploited family trust. Karen's routine date night became a federal investigation that revealed how predators could infiltrate families through legitimate childcare services, transforming the sanctuary of home into a performance space for online exploitation. Story 33. The Physical Therapist. Mark's recovery from knee surgery was about to become a nightmare when he discovered that his physical therapist had been deliberately prolonging his treatment to maximize insurance payments. The familiar routine of exercises and manual therapy had become Mark's pathway back to normal life, with professional guidance ensuring that his recovery followed proper protocols and timelines. Dr. Rodriguez had been treating Mark for 3 months, always providing thorough explanations of treatment plans and demonstrating the kind of expertise that justified his reputation for excellent patient outcomes. The physical therapy clinic's professional atmosphere and modern equipment suggested competence and commitment to patient care, with certifications and testimonials that reinforced Dr. Rodriguez's credentials. But Mark's progress had been slower than expected, and today he decided to ask for a second opinion about his treatment plan. The consultation revealed that Dr. Rodriguez had been deliberately providing ineffective treatments while documenting false progress reports, extending Mark's therapy sessions to maximize insurance reimbursements. Mark's medical recovery became a fraud investigation that exposed how healthcare providers could exploit patients' trust and vulnerability, turning the healing process into a criminal enterprise that prioritized profit over patient welfare. Story 34. The Uber Driver. Lisa's late-night ride home from downtown was about to become a kidnapping when she realized her driver had been drugging passengers through the car's air conditioning system. The familiar comfort of ride-sharing had made solo travel feel safer and more convenient, with driver ratings and GPS tracking providing the illusion of security in an uncertain urban environment. She'd taken dozens of rides without incident, always following safety protocols while appreciating the convenience of professional transportation. Tonight's driver seemed professional and courteous, his car clean and his route efficient as he navigated the familiar streets between the entertainment district and her apartment. But Lisa began feeling dizzy and disoriented, symptoms that seemed inconsistent with her minimal alcohol consumption during the evening. The ride became a nightmare when she realized that the driver had been using a modified air conditioning system to dispense sedatives, rendering passengers unconscious for robbery and assault. Lisa's convenient transportation became a federal case when investigators discovered that the driver had been part of a network that used ride-sharing services to target vulnerable passengers, turning the trust-based economy into a hunting ground for predators who exploited the intimacy of shared transportation. Story 35. The Locksmith. Jennifer's emergency locksmith call was about to introduce her to a criminal who had been using locksmith services to gain unauthorized access to homes throughout the neighborhood. The familiar frustration of being locked out of her own home had led Jennifer to call the first locksmith she found through an online search, trusting that professional licensing would ensure reliable and honest service. Dave arrived quickly with a van full of professional equipment and a confident manner that suggested years of experience solving similar problems. The lockpicking work seemed thorough and competent, with Dave explaining the problem and providing estimates for additional security upgrades that would prevent future lockouts. But Jennifer noticed that Dave spent an unusual amount of time examining her home's other entry points, and his questions about her living situation seemed too personal for professional conversation. The locksmith service became a police investigation when Jennifer's home was burglarized by criminals who knew exactly how to defeat her security system and had keys that shouldn't have existed. Jennifer's emergency lockout became a violation of her home security that revealed how service providers could exploit their access to create criminal opportunities, turning professional assistance into a tool for future victimization. Story 36. The Appliance Repair. Robert's washing machine repair was about to reveal that the technician had been installing hidden cameras in customers' homes while performing legitimate service calls. The familiar frustration of dealing with broken appliances had led Robert to trust his washing machine to a repair service that seemed professional and competent, with certifications and customer reviews that suggested expertise and integrity. Mike had been servicing Robert's neighborhood for 3 years, always providing reliable repairs and honest assessments that had earned the trust of local residents. The repair work seemed thorough and professional, with Mike explaining the problem and providing maintenance tips that would extend the appliance's lifespan. But Robert noticed that Mike spent an unusual amount of time working in areas of his home that had nothing to do with appliance repair, and his questions about Robert's work schedule seemed too personal for professional conversation. The appliance repair became a police investigation when Robert discovered tiny cameras in his bedroom and bathroom, installed by a criminal who used home service calls to gain access to victims' most private spaces. Robert's routine appliance maintenance became a violation of his privacy that took months to fully remediate, with the knowledge that his most intimate moments had been recorded and potentially distributed online. Story 37. The Personal Trainer. Michelle's fitness goals were about to become a nightmare when she discovered that her personal trainer had been secretly recording their sessions and selling the videos online. The familiar environment of the private gym provided the perfect setting for Michelle's fitness journey, with professional equipment and personalized attention that had helped her achieve results she'd never thought possible. Brad had been training Michelle for 8 months, always maintaining professional boundaries while providing excellent guidance that had significantly improved her strength and confidence. The training facility's reputation for professional service and discretion had made Michelle feel comfortable with the intensive workouts, trusting that privacy and professionalism would ensure appropriate treatment. But Michelle noticed that Brad's phone was always positioned at unusual angles during their sessions, and his suggestions about workout attire seemed inappropriate for legitimate fitness instruction. The personal training became a criminal case when Michelle discovered that Brad had been recording their sessions without consent, selling the videos to websites that specialized in exploiting women's workout routines. Michelle's fitness journey became a federal investigation that exposed how fitness professionals could exploit their position of trust and physical access to victimize clients who were already in vulnerable positions. Story 38. The Jeweler. Patricia's jewelry repair was about to reveal that her trusted jeweler had been replacing precious stones with worthless fakes while charging for genuine restoration work. The familiar ritual of entrusting her grandmother's ring to professional restoration had made Patricia feel confident about preserving family heirlooms that held both financial and sentimental value. Mr. Goldstein had been serving Patricia's family for 15 years, always providing excellent craftsmanship and honest assessments that had earned their trust and loyalty. The jewelry shop's professional atmosphere and impressive credentials suggested expertise and integrity, with certifications and customer testimonials that reinforced Mr. Goldstein's reputation for quality work. But Patricia noticed that her ring looked different after the repair, and the stones seemed to lack the brilliance she remembered from her grandmother's descriptions. The jewelry repair became a fraud investigation when Patricia discovered that Mr. Goldstein had been systematically replacing customers' precious stones with synthetic alternatives, selling the genuine gems while charging for authentic restoration work. Patricia's family heirloom became evidence in a criminal case that revealed how trusted professionals could exploit their expertise to defraud customers who relied on their knowledge and honesty. Story 39. The Pest Control. David's termite inspection was about to become a home invasion when he discovered that the pest control technician had been using service calls to case homes for future burglaries. The familiar concern about protecting his home's structural integrity had led David to schedule regular pest control services, trusting that professional expertise would prevent expensive damage to his property. Jim had been providing pest control services for David's neighborhood for 2 years, always arriving on time and providing thorough inspections that seemed to justify his reputation for quality work. The pest control service seemed professional and reliable, with licensing and insurance that suggested legitimate business practices and customer protection. But David noticed that Jim spent an unusual amount of time examining areas of his home that had nothing to do with pest control, and his questions about David's work schedule and vacation plans seemed too personal for professional conversation. The pest control service became a police investigation when David's home was burglarized by criminals who knew exactly when the house would be empty and where valuable items were located. David's routine home maintenance became a lesson in how service providers could exploit their access to private property, using legitimate business relationships to gather intelligence for criminal activities. Story 40. The Handyman. Susan's home repairs were about to become a nightmare when she discovered that her handyman had been installing hidden surveillance equipment while performing legitimate maintenance work. The familiar process of maintaining her older home had led Susan to develop a relationship with Carlos, a handyman who seemed competent and trustworthy, always providing fair prices and quality work. Carlos had been helping Susan with various projects for over a year, always demonstrating the kind of reliability that had made him feel like part of the family. The repair work seemed thorough and professional, with Carlos explaining problems and providing solutions that protected Susan's investment in her property. But Susan noticed that Carlos spent an unusual amount of time working in areas that required access to her bedroom and bathroom, and his questions about her living situation seemed too personal for professional conversation. The home repairs became a police investigation when Susan discovered tiny cameras and listening devices throughout her house, installed by a criminal who used handyman services to gain access to victims' most private spaces. Susan's routine home maintenance became a violation of her privacy that revealed how service providers could exploit their access to create ongoing surveillance opportunities. Story 41. The Florist. Maria's wedding flower order was about to become a disaster when she discovered that her florist had been using her venue information to plan a robbery during her reception. The familiar excitement of planning her perfect wedding had led Maria to trust her floral arrangements to a business that seemed professional and experienced, with a portfolio of beautiful work that suggested expertise and reliability. Rose Petal's florist had been serving Maria's community for 8 years, always providing stunning arrangements and attentive service that had earned the trust of local couples. The flower shop's professional atmosphere and impressive displays suggested competence and commitment to customer satisfaction, with testimonials and certifications that reinforced their reputation for quality work. But Maria noticed that the florist asked unusually detailed questions about her wedding venue's layout, guest count, and security arrangements, information that seemed beyond what was necessary for floral planning. The wedding preparations became a police investigation when Maria discovered that the florist had been using wedding information to plan robberies at venues during ceremonies, when valuable gifts and personal items would be concentrated in predictable locations. Maria's dream wedding became a federal case that revealed how service providers could exploit their access to private information, turning celebration planning into criminal opportunity. Story 42. The Dog Walker. Tom's pet care service was about to become a burglary when he discovered that his dog walker had been using pet care as cover to study his home's security system and daily routines. The familiar routine of ensuring his golden retriever Max received proper exercise had led Tom to hire a professional dog walking service, trusting that bonding and insurance would ensure his pet's safety and his home's security. Jennifer had been walking Max for 4 months, always providing reliable service and sending photo updates that demonstrated genuine care for his pet's well-being. The pet care service seemed professional and trustworthy, with excellent reviews and proper licensing that suggested legitimate business practices and animal welfare standards. But Tom noticed that Jennifer spent an unusual amount of time inside his home, and her questions about his work schedule and travel plans seemed too personal for professional pet care. The dog walking service became a police investigation when Tom's home was burglarized by criminals who knew exactly when the house would be empty and how to disable the security system without disturbing Max. Tom's pet care became a lesson in how service providers could exploit their access to private property and personal information, using animal welfare as cover for criminal intelligence gathering. Story 43. The Tailor. Rebecca's dress alterations were about to reveal that her tailor had been secretly recording her fittings and selling the videos to online predators. The familiar ritual of having her professional wardrobe tailored to perfection had made Rebecca feel confident about her appearance in demanding corporate environments, with expert alterations ensuring that her clothing always fit properly. Mrs. Chen had been providing tailoring services for Rebecca for 3 years, always demonstrating the kind of attention to detail that justified her reputation for excellent workmanship. The tailor shop's professional atmosphere and impressive credentials suggested expertise and discretion, with privacy policies and customer testimonials that reinforced Mrs. Chen's reputation for appropriate service. But Rebecca noticed that Mrs. Chen's phone was always positioned at unusual angles during fittings, and her suggestions about trying on garments seemed inappropriate for legitimate tailoring work. The dress alterations became a criminal case when Rebecca discovered that Mrs. Chen had been recording fitting sessions without consent, selling the videos to websites that specialized in exploiting women's clothing changes. Rebecca's professional wardrobe became evidence in a federal investigation that exposed how service providers could exploit their position of trust and physical access to victimize clients who were already in vulnerable positions. Story 44. The Pool Cleaner. Kevin's weekly pool maintenance was about to become a home invasion when he discovered that his pool cleaner had been using service calls to study his family's routines and security weaknesses. The familiar ritual of maintaining his backyard pool had led Kevin to hire a professional service, trusting that licensing and insurance would ensure quality work and property protection. Mike had been cleaning Kevin's pool for 6 months, always providing thorough service and helpful maintenance tips that had kept the water crystal clear throughout the swimming season. The pool service seemed professional and reliable, with proper equipment and chemical expertise that suggested legitimate business practices and customer safety. But Kevin noticed that Mike spent an unusual amount of time working near windows and seemed unusually interested in Kevin's home security system and family schedules. The pool maintenance became a police investigation when Kevin's home was burglarized by criminals who knew exactly when the family would be away and how to access the property through the pool area. Kevin's routine pool care became a lesson in how service providers could exploit their access to private property, using legitimate business relationships to gather intelligence for criminal activities that threatened family safety. Story 45. The Carpet Cleaner. Linda's carpet cleaning service was about to become a nightmare when she discovered that the technician had been using the opportunity to plant drugs in her home for a later police raid. The familiar process of maintaining her home's carpets had led Linda to hire a professional cleaning service, trusting that proper equipment and expertise would protect her investment in quality flooring. Ray had been providing carpet cleaning services for Linda's neighborhood for 18 months, always arriving on time and providing thorough work that seemed to justify his reputation for quality service. The cleaning service seemed professional and reliable, with proper licensing and insurance that suggested legitimate business practices and customer protection. But Linda noticed that Ray spent an unusual amount of time working in areas that seemed already clean, and his questions about her work schedule and personal life seemed too personal for professional conversation. The carpet cleaning became a federal investigation when Linda's home was raided by police, who found drugs that had been planted by Ray, who was working with corrupt officers to frame homeowners for crimes they didn't commit. Linda's routine home maintenance became a legal nightmare that revealed how service providers could exploit their access to private property, turning home improvement into a tool for criminal frame-ups. Story 46. The Photographer. Sarah's family portrait session was about to become a blackmail scheme when she discovered that her photographer had been secretly recording private moments and using them to extort money from clients. The familiar excitement of capturing precious family memories had led Sarah to hire a professional photographer, trusting that experience and creativity would produce beautiful images that would be treasured for generations. Michael had been providing photography services for Sarah's community for 5 years, always demonstrating the kind of artistic vision that had earned him excellent reviews and referrals. The photography studio's professional atmosphere and impressive portfolio suggested expertise and discretion, with privacy policies and customer testimonials that reinforced Michael's reputation for appropriate service. But Sarah noticed that Michael's cameras were always running, even during breaks and preparation time, and his suggestions about poses and clothing seemed inappropriate for legitimate family photography. The portrait session became a criminal case when Sarah discovered that Michael had been recording private moments without consent, using the footage to blackmail clients who trusted him with their most precious family memories. Sarah's family photography became evidence in a federal investigation that exposed how service providers could exploit their position of trust and intimate access to victimize families who were already in vulnerable positions. Story 47. The Accountant. Robert's tax preparation was about to become identity theft when he discovered that his accountant had been selling clients' personal information to criminal networks. The familiar stress of tax season had led Robert to trust his financial information to a professional accountant, confident that certification and experience would ensure accurate preparation and confidential handling of sensitive data. Miss Johnson had been preparing Robert's taxes for 4 years, always demonstrating the kind of attention to detail that had earned his trust and loyalty. The accounting office's professional atmosphere and impressive credentials suggested expertise and discretion, with privacy policies and professional standards that reinforced Miss Johnson's reputation for appropriate service. But Robert noticed unusual activity on his credit report, and financial accounts that he hadn't opened were appearing in his name. The tax preparation became a federal investigation when Robert discovered that Miss Johnson had been systematically selling clients' personal information to identity thieves, using her access to tax documents and financial records to enable criminal enterprises. Robert's routine tax preparation became a nightmare that revealed how trusted professionals could exploit their access to the most sensitive personal information, turning financial services into tools for criminal exploitation. Story 48. The Contractor. Jennifer's kitchen renovation was about to become a disaster when she discovered that her contractor had been using the project to hide drug manufacturing equipment in her walls. The familiar excitement of home improvement had led Jennifer to hire a contractor who seemed professional and experienced, with proper licensing and insurance that suggested quality work and customer protection. Bill had been working on Jennifer's kitchen for 2 months, always demonstrating the kind of craftsmanship that had earned him excellent reviews and referrals. The construction work seemed thorough and professional, with attention to detail that suggested genuine pride in quality workmanship. But Jennifer noticed unusual smells coming from the walls, and Bill's crew seemed unusually secretive about their work methods and material choices. The kitchen renovation became a federal investigation when Jennifer discovered that Bill had been installing drug manufacturing equipment inside her walls, using home improvement projects to create hidden laboratories that would be difficult for authorities to detect. Jennifer's dream kitchen became evidence in a criminal case that revealed how contractors could exploit their access to private property, turning home improvement into cover for dangerous criminal enterprises. Story 49. The Courier. Michael's package delivery was about to become a federal case when he discovered that his courier service had been using legitimate deliveries to transport illegal drugs and weapons. The familiar convenience of professional delivery services had made Michael's business operations more efficient, with reliable transportation ensuring that important documents and materials reached their destinations safely and on time. Express delivery had been serving Michael's company for 2 years, always providing professional service and secure handling that had earned his trust and business loyalty. The courier service seemed legitimate and professional, with proper licensing and insurance that suggested quality service and customer protection. But Michael noticed that some packages arrived with unusual smells or sounds, and the delivery schedules seemed inconsistent with the service's stated policies. The package delivery became a federal investigation when Michael discovered that Express Delivery had been using legitimate business deliveries to transport contraband, mixing illegal materials with normal packages to avoid detection by authorities. Michael's business logistics became evidence in a criminal case that revealed how service providers could exploit their access to transportation networks, turning legitimate business operations into cover for dangerous criminal enterprises. Story 50. The Travel Agent. Patricia's vacation planning was about to become a nightmare when she discovered that her travel agent had been selling her itinerary information to criminals who specialized in robbing empty homes. The familiar excitement of planning her dream vacation had led Patricia to trust her travel arrangements to a professional agent, confident that experience and industry connections would ensure a perfect trip and competitive prices. Worldwide Travel had been serving Patricia's community for 10 years, always providing excellent service and personalized attention that had earned the trust of local travelers. The travel agency's professional atmosphere and impressive credentials suggested expertise and customer commitment, with testimonials and certifications that reinforced their reputation for quality service. But Patricia noticed that her travel agent asked unusually detailed questions about her home security system, pet care arrangements, and local contacts, information that seemed beyond what was necessary for travel planning. The vacation planning became a police investigation when Patricia's home was burglarized during her trip by criminals who knew exactly when she would be away and how long she would be gone. Patricia's dream vacation became a federal case that revealed how service providers could exploit their access to personal information, turning travel planning into criminal intelligence gathering that threatened customer safety and security. These 50 stories remind us that horror doesn't always announce itself with dramatic music or obvious warning signs. Sometimes the most terrifying moments emerge from the mundane routines we trust. Without question, the morning coffee that tastes slightly off, the helpful stranger who knows too much about our schedule, the professional service that seems too good to be true. In a world where we must rely on countless strangers to maintain the fabric of our daily lives, these nightmares serve as a chilling reminder that trust, while necessary, should never be blind. The barista, the babysitter, the repair technician, the medical professional each represents a small leap of faith we make dozens of times each day. Perhaps the most unsettling truth these stories reveal is how easily our ordinary moments can become someone else's opportunity. The routines that bring us comfort and efficiency can also make us predictable, vulnerable, and exposed to those who would exploit our trust. But these nightmares also teach us resilience. Each story shows people who survived, who fought back, who learned to trust their instincts when something felt wrong. They remind us that awareness and caution aren't paranoia. They're survival skills that can protect us and our loved ones from the predators who hide in plain sight. The next time you hand your keys to a valet, welcome a repair technician into your home, or trust a stranger with your personal information, remember these stories. Not to live in fear, but to live with awareness. Because in a world where ordinary days can become extraordinary nightmares, the most powerful protection is the wisdom to know that sometimes the person you trust most is the one you should fear. Welcome to Sinister Happening, where every day has the potential to become the day that changes everything.